Hello 7F, Mr. Cleary here. I've got a PowerPoint to go through with you. Actually, I won't do it like that. Following on from last week, we're spending a bit of time with our three new focus words: validity, irregular, and plateau. Now, before we do the learning intention and success criteria, I would like you just to have a go at saying these words. Now, you're home alone. No one's going to think too much of that you're a strange person saying random words in the middle of your bedroom or wherever you're working. So, nice and loud with me, we're going to say these three words 3 times each. Validity, validity, validity. Irregular, irregular, irregular. And finally, plateau, plateau, plateau. Beautiful. I'm sure you did a fine job. Okay, so learning intention, success criteria, these are the same ones we were working with last week. So our learning intention is to further build our understanding of vocabulary to become strong readers. Success criteria. I can identify and say our focus words. I can explain our focus words and apply this knowledge to help me use them. And I can connect our focus words to other words and justify my thinking. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time on these words just to make sure that these definitions are absolutely crystal clear. And then I've got some work for you to do once we've been through this PowerPoint. So starting with the word validity. This is the state of something being valid. So if something has validity, it is valid. So we need to know what valid means. So valid means true, correct, in date, of the right kind. Okay, if something is valid, that's what it is. It's true, it's correct, it's in date, it's timely, and it is of the right kind. So some examples would be a valid ticket for the train. Okay, so if you catch the train but it's got yesterday's date on it, you do not have a valid ticket. Okay, so a valid ticket for the train is one example. A valid password or username for a computer system. How annoying is that? You sit down, you log in, and the computer says your username or password is invalid. That means the computer system doesn't recognize what you're typing into it. Okay, so you need a valid username and password to get into your computer system. So when you put those things into the computer system, before the computer system lets you in, it checks the validity of that username and password. And lastly, here we've got a valid point. So sometimes if you're having an argument with someone and you say something that is true and really changes the course of that argument, they might say, oh, that's a really valid point. So what they're saying when they say that is that you've made, a true and correct and of the right kind point. Okay, so a valid point. Synonyms. Okay, so synonyms are words that mean the same thing. Legitimate, sound, unexpired, or credible. So you might have heard people say legit before. So legit is the short version of legitimate. And when something is legitimate, it's valid, it's true, it's correct, it's these sorts of things. Okay. Now I didn't just make up those synonyms, and I certainly didn't just pull them out of my brain. I have a couple of techniques for looking up synonyms when I'm on my computer. So Google is always handy, or any search engine. So that's Google there. And this is DuckDuckGo here, which is a different search engine. So they give you slightly different responses. But if I want synonyms for valid, all I need to do is type it in, hopefully spelling it correctly. And then I'm going to get a good list of synonyms. And it'll be the same over here in DuckDuckGo, valid synonyms. So that's given me some similar and related words and some antonyms as well, which is one of the things we often look at to try and understand the word that we're looking at. Now, you're going to have a lot more luck in Google or any search engine using the root word rather than using a word that has a suffix on the end or a prefix at the start. So if you can work out if that word has a prefix or a suffix in it and remove that before you start searching, you're going to have better results. Another trick I like to use, if you're using Microsoft Word and you right click the word, you can get synonyms from there. So we right click valid. In Word, go to synonyms. We've got lawful, legal, binding, effective, enforce. So illegal here is an antonym, usable, and usable again. So all those words mean very similar things to valid. Okay. So we've gone through our examples. We've got some synonyms here: legitimate sound, unexpected and credible. Sorry, unexpired and credible. And our antonyms: invalid. Okay, so putting the prefix in on the word, changing its definition to the exact opposite. So invalid. Illegitimate, doing the same thing here with a prefix in front of legitimate. Unsound, same deal here on sound, putting in the prefix to change the meaning. Expired, and incredible is the other one. So credible, agreeing with valid and being true. So incredible, often we'll say something's incredible when it's really, really awesome. So incredible means that it's basically unbelievable. So if you say, wow, that's incredible, what you're saying essentially is that it's so awesome and so good that you can barely believe that it's actually happened. Next word, irregular. Now, this one has a prefix on it. So the root word here is regular, and the ir at the start changes this one. It means basically that we're dealing with a word that means the opposite of regular. So when something is outside of what is expected or regular, regular equals normal / what you'd expect. Okay. Irregular, not normal, not right, not expected. So some examples of things that might be irregular. Seeing someone going through the drive-through at McDonald's in a limo. Okay. People go through the drive-through on their cars all the time. Less often people go through in a limo. Now, a limo might make it through the right kind of drive-through, and I'm sure that someone's tried it before. But if you did see that thing, you would definitely say that's a pretty irregular occurrence. Seeing a dog walk on its hind legs. Okay, not impossible. It's definitely not the normal thing. So it is pretty irregular to see a dog walk on its hind legs. Someone wearing odd socks. Again, it's not impossible. Happens now and again. Okay. But if you ask 20 people to look at their socks, you might find one who has odd socks on, and that would be a little bit irregular. Someone who has shaved off half of their beard and left the other half on, that would be very irregular. Okay. People usually either have a beard or they don't. They don't roll around with half a beard too often, but I'm sure it's happened. It's just a bit irregular. Let's have a look if we can find it. Half a beard. Halga beard. Let's see if we can find a man with half a beard. Yeah, so it's not impossible. It's just, I'm sure you'll agree, pretty irregular. I've done this myself once or twice, but only in the process of fully shaving off a beard. Do you know what I'm saying? I do it for like 2 minutes, and I show my kids and freak them out, and then I quickly shave the other half off. I don't know what this guy's got going on here. He's got some chocolates on his half beard. Yeah, it's a pretty cool look there, the old half beard. I'm sure you'll agree, quite irregular. All right, back to our presentation. So, synonyms, things that mean the same: atypical, unorthodox. Now, both of these words do the same thing as irregular. They have a prefix at the start that turns the meaning on its head. So, irregular means the opposite of regular. Atypical means the opposite of typical. Okay, if something's typical, it's regular. It's normal. It's what you'd expect. If it's atypical, it is the opposite of all of those things. Same with orthodox. Orthodox is a word that means normal. Orthodox, what you'd expect. Normal, what you'd expect. Unorthodox, total opposite. And an antonym for irregular, we have regular and normal. Moving on to plateau. Now, plateau is a bit of a harder word to work with. So I used my search engines on plateau, and I used my right-click trick over in Word on plateau, but almost everything I found was to do with the land definition of plateau, as I can show you here. If I go to synonyms for plateau here, I've got table, upland, highland, hill, mesa, tableland, flat terrain. All of these things are sort of to do with geography, whereas we are taking a bit of a look at this word plateau from a different perspective. So I'm going to use a couple of pictures over here because the pictures really help cement this definition into my head. And hopefully yours too. So plateau, when something, an event, action or phenomenon levels out to reach a stable level and to level off. Examples, reaching peak fitness. Okay, so with the example there, if you run and run and run and you run every day, you'll start getting fitter and fitter and fitter, and you'll be able to handle more oxygen in your lungs, and your lungs will get better at transferring oxygen into your bloodstream, and you become quite fit. But eventually, you'll get to a point where you cannot get any fitter, and that point is called a plateau. Now, a lot of people use the weightlifter example from our last lesson, and the idea being that that guy had lifted lots of weights, but he'd gotten to a point where he couldn't lift any more weights. So that was his plateau, and that really is the plateau that we were looking at from our examples. Now, the plateau in geography is not that different. So if we have a look at this picture here, this line along the top here, that would be described as the plateau. And much like your fitness might level off, this land, this elevated land here, it's leveled off. So that's the plateau. So in a lot of ways, they're the same thing. Now I've got a graph here. This graph actually relates to COVID-19 infections, and this graph is doing the rounds. You'll see it on the news every night. If you're watching the news, you'll see it on the websites every day if you're looking at the news websites. And a few students did actually use this picture or examples from this in some of the work that they've done on plateau. So just like the mountain, which comes up here in plateaus, these graphs, a lot of these graphs are starting to plateau, and Australia is one example here. So you have a whole heap of countries here represented by these lines on the graphs, and quite a few of them where COVID-19 infections are starting to plateau. So the black line, if you follow it up, is Australia, and for a couple of months, our infection rates were just going up, 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 up. And that's why governments were so concerned, and that's one of the reasons why you're doing school at home. So we needed to put a stop to that. So we brought in a whole heap of social distancing rules. School got cancelled, all of those sorts of things. And at that point, infection rates started to plateau. So you can see that leveling out there. That's the plateau. And you can see here, this example here, that's China's infection rate. So it's plateaued big time. Now its line is a little bit longer because they've had infections of COVID-19 in China for longer than we've had them over here in Australia. So that's why these lines are a little bit different in length. What else have we got here? So South Korea's really plateaued off. New Zealand's infection rate is plateaued. Taiwan's has plateaued. You can see the US here, it sort of looks like it's plateauing, and it might be. A little bit more time might need to happen to see whether it goes this way or whether it goes back up again. But the plateau that we are dealing with, it's essentially the same thing here. It's that leveling out of a landform, leveling out of your fitness in this graph, the leveling out of infection rates of COVID-19. So with plateau, synonyms. Now I couldn't find any single word synonyms for plateau apart from those geography ones. So I've used some synonyms which are a couple of words. So period of little change, lull, actually that is one word. Good on me, I did find one. Leveling off period. And antonyms, so the opposites, were peak and hump. Now these are both words that, like plateau, they could be talking about something to do with geography, they could be talking about something to do with a leveling off a graph, or a leveling off of your fitness, or a leveling off of something that's not necessarily a mountain like this one. Okay, so onto your tasks for today. So for each of these words for today, I want you to create a color card. Now you know how to do this. We've done this lots. So look back through your book if you're not sure what to do. You need to think about the word, think about what color it makes you think of, and then write a sentence or two explaining why you've chosen that color for that word. Okay, now I know that all of you have color cards in your books, so just put them in your books in exactly the same way. That'll be great. Now, I also want you to, for each word, place them in a sentence that shows you can place them into context correctly. So it's really essential that your sentence has the word, but that your sentence makes really good sense. And now, before you put that into your book, I want you to do this. IM me, so instant message me, your sentence so we can check it's correct. Then, once I give you the okay, copy it into your book under your color cards. So get onto your Edmodo, send me a sentence for each word, and we'll have a little chat through Edmodo. If your sentences are perfect, I'll say go for it, pop that in your book and you're all sorted. If there's anything we need to tweak, we'll have that discussion through Edmodo. We'll make sure your sentence is absolutely perfect before we copy it into your book. All right, I've talked for long enough. Enjoy your work today. Validity, irregular, plateau. Make sure those words are in your head. Make sure you can say them really well. Have a chat to your mum and dad about them and see if they know what they mean as well. And have a lovely day. Thanks, guys.